Sexual harassment in the workplace remains a persistent problem. One-third of the approximately 90,000 charges received by the Federal Equal Opportunity Commission included an allegation of workplace harassment. This included, among other things, charges of unlawful harassment on the basis of sex, including sexual orientation, gender, pregnancy, race, disability, age, national origin, color, and religion. Workplace harassment too often goes unreported. Common workplace-based responses by those who experience sex-based harassment are to avoid the harasser, deny or downplay the gravity of the situation, or attempt to ignore, forget, or endure the behavior. The least common response to harassment is to take some formal action, either to report the harassment internally or file a formal legal complaint. Roughly 3 out of 4 individuals who experience harassment never even talk to a supervisor or manager about their harassing conduct. Employees who experience harassment fail to report the harassing behavior or fail to file the complaint because they fear disbelief of their claim, inaction on their claim, blame, or social or professional retaliation. It is imperative that we prevent sexual harassment. When dealership owners consider the costs of workplace harassment, they often focus on legal costs, and with good reason. Last year, the Federal Equal Opportunity Commission alone recovered $164.5 million for workers alleging harassment, and these direct costs are just the tip of the iceberg. Workplace harassment, first and foremost, comes at a steep cost to those who suffer it as they experience mental, physical, and economic harm. Beyond that, workplace harassment affects all workers, and its true cost includes decreased productivity, increased turnover, and reputational harm. Stopping workplace harassment starts at the top, with you. Leadership and accountability are critical. Workplace culture has the greatest impact on allowing harassment to flourish, and the opposite in preventing harassment. The importance of leadership cannot be overstated. Effective harassment prevention efforts and workplace culture in which harassment is not tolerated must start with and involve the highest level of management of your dealership. But a commitment, even from the top, to a diverse, inclusive, and respectful workforce is not enough. Rather, at all levels across all positions, a dealership must have systems in place that hold employees accountable for this expectation. Accountability systems must ensure that those who engage in harassment are held responsible in a meaningful, appropriate, and proportional manner, and those whose job is to prevent or respond to harassment should be rewarded for doing that job well or penalized for failing to do so. Finally, leadership means ensuring that anti-harassment efforts are given the necessary time and resources to be effective. Training must change. Much of the training done over the last 30 years has not worked as a prevention tool. It's been too focused on simply avoiding legal liability. Effective training can reduce workplace harassment and recognize that ineffective training can be unhelpful or even counterproductive. Training is most effective when tailored to the specific workforce or workplace and different types of employees, such as dealer employees. When trained correctly, general managers and sales managers in particular can be a dealership's most valuable resource in preventing and stopping harassment. New and different approaches to training should be explored. New models of training show promise for harassment training. Bystander intervention training, increasingly used to combat sexual violence, empowers coworkers and gives them the tools to intervene when they witness harassing behavior and may show promise for harassment prevention. Workplace civility training that does not focus on eliminating unwelcome or offensive behavior based on characteristics protected under employment non-discrimination laws, but rather on promoting respect and civility in the workplace generally, likewise, may offer solutions. Harassment in the workplace will not stop on its own. It's your responsibility to fight and stop workplace harassment. We cannot be complacent bystanders and expect our dealerships' cultures to change themselves. For this reason, we suggest exploring the launch of an It's On Us campaign for the workplace. Originally developed to reduce sexual violence in educational settings, the It's On Us campaign was premised on the idea that students, faculty, and campus staff were empowered to be part of the solution to sexual assault and could be provided the tools and resources to prevent sexual assault as engaged bystanders. Launching a similar It's On Us campaign in your dealership, large and small, urban and rural, is a great goal. But doing so could transform the problem of workplace harassment from being about targets, harassers, and legal compliance into one in which coworkers, supervisors, clients, and customers all have roles in stopping harassment. Preventing sexual harassment begins with leadership. What steps can a dealership's leadership take to ensure that its dealership culture reflects the leadership's values of not tolerating harassment and promoting civility and respect? First, you, as a leader, must establish a sense of urgency about preventing harassment. You will need to take a visible role in stating the importance of having a dealership that is free of harassment. Be sure your employees know specific behaviors are not acceptable in a dealership. One way to communicate a sense of urgency is to conduct a survey of employees to determine whether employees feel that harassment exists in a dealership and is tolerated. Your survey could be as simple as a document with 10 questions on topics such as if the employee's experienced harassment, if the employee has witnessed harassment, and asking if the employee is aware of how to report harassment. It is recommended that you conduct more than one survey and always ensure your employees' responses are completely confidential, or you may want to even conduct surveys with respondents remaining completely anonymous. A dealership must also have an effective policy on sexual harassment, procedures for reporting sexual harassment, and must conduct effective trainings on these policies and procedures. Anti-harassment policies must be communicated clearly to all dealership employees, and reporting systems must be implemented consistently. It is imperative that all training ensures that dealership employees are aware of how to report harassment. Accountability. Accountability must be demonstrated at all times. A dealership that has an effective anti-harassment program, including an effective reporting system, a thorough workplace investigation system, which sometimes may include an out-of-house professional investigator, and appropriate corrective actions, and communicates these policies to dealership employees, shows the dealership takes harassment very seriously. This in turn means that more dealership employees will be likely to complain if they experience harassment or report harassment they observe, so that the dealership may deal with such incidents more effectively. This creates a positive cycle that can ultimately reduce the amount of harassment that occurs in a dealership. Accountability also means employees of the dealership must be accountable for their actions. General managers and sales managers must be held responsible for monitoring and stopping harassment by dealership employees that they supervise and manage. Policies, reporting procedures, investigations, and corrective actions are essential components of the efforts that a dealership must engage in to prevent harassment. Any effective dealership sexual harassment program begins with an anti-harassment policy. It is imperative that this anti-harassment policy is in writing. A dealership needs a stated policy against harassment that describes the behaviors that will not be tolerated in the dealership and the procedures to follow in reporting and responding to harassment. Employees in workplaces without policies report the highest levels of harassment. Dealers should adopt a robust anti-harassment policy, regularly train each employee on its contents, and vigorously follow and enforce the policy. The dealership anti-harassment policy should include a clear explanation of prohibited conduct, including examples. It's got to have clear assurance that employees who make complaints or provide information related to complaints, witnesses, or others who participate in the investigation will be protected against all forms of retaliation. It's got to have a clearly described complaint process that provides multiple accessible avenues of complaints and needs assurance that the employer will protect the confidentiality of the harassment complaints to the fullest extent possible. A complaint process must provide a prompt, thorough, and impartial investigation, and it needs to also include assurances that the dealership will take immediate corrective action when it determines that harassment has occurred and respond appropriately to behavior which may not be legally defined as harassment, but which left unchecked could lead to harassment. A dealership's policy should be in clear, simple words in all languages that are used in your dealership. The words of the policy itself should be simple and very easy to understand. Similarly, an effective policy should make clear that harassment on the basis of any protected characteristic will absolutely not be tolerated. It is not acceptable to just have a written policy. The policy must be communicated on a regular basis to dealership employees, particularly information on how to file a complaint or how to report harassment that one has observed, and how an employee who files a complaint or an employee who reports harassment or participates in an investigation of an alleged harassment will be protected from all types of retaliation. Harassment via social media. Many people use social media to attack and harass others, so it is crucial that a dealership includes social media when drafting a harassment policy. Any anti-harassment policy should make it clear that harassment on social media carries the exact same weight as harassment in the dealership workplace. Owners, general managers, sales managers with anti-harassment responsibilities should be wary of their social media connections with all employees. You must remember that social media platforms are potential vehicles for workplace-related harassment, and social media must be included in any dealership harassment policy. Reporting systems. Effective reporting systems for allegations of harassment are among the most critical elements of any dealership's anti-harassment effort. A proper reporting system must easily allow a person that has experienced harassment to report the harassment and offer a means to which dealership employees that have witnessed harassment may report those incidents as well. Reporting systems must include a choice of reporting avenues along with more than one complaint handler. In other words, you should offer employees several different ways to report harassment and have multiple persons at the dealership that the employee may report harassment to. You may, for example, have a special link on your website, have a specific email address such as harassment@abcmotors.com, a multilingual harassment phone number, and a readily available paper form that can be completed to report harassment incidents. You should have more than one person to report to as well, preferably with separate genders. A person reporting harassment may feel more comfortable reporting the harassment incident to someone of the same gender. An effective and easy-to-use reporting system also communicates to employees the dealership's commitment to the practices it has set forth in the anti-harassment policy. Harassment investigations. Your reporting system must provide timely responses and investigations. Dealership harassment investigations should be kept as confidential as is possible. Dealership employees must feel safe to express their views without fear of retribution. The privacy of both the accuser and the accused should be protected to the greatest extent possible. Investigators should document all steps taken from the point of first contact, prepare a written report, and communicate the results to all relevant parties. It is then necessary to take corrective actions to ensure the harassment never, ever occurs again. Compliance training. Regular training of general managers, salespersons, parts and repair employees, and all employees of the dealership is highly recommended. You should develop training methods that are geared towards different levels of the dealership. For example, you should have one training course designed for managers and supervisors and sales managers, and another designed for all dealership employees. Compliance training for all employees. The compliance training for all employees should describe illegal harassment and conduct that, if left unchecked, might rise to the level of illegal harassment. It should include examples that are tailored specifically to the dealership industry. It must educate employees about their rights and responsibilities if they experience conduct that is not acceptable in the dealership. It must describe in simple terms the process for reporting harassment that experienced or observed, and explains the consequences of engaging in contact that is unacceptable in the dealership. Compliance training for management. Compliance training for management must include easy to understand and realistic methods for dealing with harassment that they observe, that is reported to them, or which they have knowledge of information, including description of sanctions for failing to use such methods. It must also provide clear instructions on how to report harassing behavior right up the chain of command. The training must encourage sales managers and supervisors to practice situational awareness and assess the workforce within their responsibility for risk factors of harassment. Always remember to include the disciplinary actions for anyone that fails to properly report harassment they have been notified of or any harassment that they have witnessed.